It was easy to guess, but obviously no, the Until Dawn project has not been abandoned. When Sony noticed that the London studio was having trouble developing the game, they were lucky enough to find another studio that was already developing a very similar game called Beyond, supposed to be released on PlayStation 3 around 2013. This studio is Supermassive Games, the creators we know nowadays for this masterpiece of horror games that is Until Dawn. Until Dawn was therefore not called Until Dawn at the start of its production, but was instead named Beyond. According to some dates of the files in the builds of this version, the game would have started to be developed around 2009. The concept of this build was about what we know nowadays as the little walk in the woods between Jessica and Mike going to the little cabin in the forest, but in only one chapter and not divided into 3 chapters compared to the game that we know today. It was also possible, like in the London studio version, to control a flashlight in order to explore the environments. When I first wrote this part, I only had to show you the only 2 images available from this build, and those were just the game logos. But it turns out that this build was released publicly a little less than 2 months ago when this video was released, which means that this build is very recent and that only a few people have managed to launch it correctly to access to the level. What you will see in a few seconds is the only footage of this build that is available on the internet. When launching the build, we can observe the animation of another game called Killzone 3, and then the menu appears. It is possible to access and launch a level that is not visible on the menu. And so here is what one of the first works done by Supermassive Games on Beyond looks like. We can directly notice what place it is in the final game, even if the textures and the position of the objects are completely different. To put it simply, this map is very small in size, there is no lighting, some textures are buggy, and the background is very incomplete. And that's all. There is nothing more. Little side note, the characters Mike and Jessica already existed at that time in the game files. A friend of mine who has been collecting Until Dawn builds for years has managed to unlock and run the chapters 3 of this build as well as a test level. This part of the build is private, so I want to thank him for agreeing to let me show some screenshots of this chapter publicly. In the third chapter, we can observe that the level does not even have textures applied. This is what we call a grey box level. There are also some signs to explain what will happen during the walk. In the last test level, we can observe various 3D models that could look like the platforms and pipes that are in the sanatorium. But it's more than possible that the sanatorium wasn't even a thing at that point in the development. It turns out that the April 2011 first-person build contains and uses files from the Beyond build, but to learn more about that, you will have to wait for the video entirely dedicated to Until Dawn builds.